We're going to need them to up our limit though.
Good morning. I have a question. Do you think Facebook is obsolete? That's what we're going to talk about today. This is Marketing Moms. I'm Ann Brennan, and this is
Anastasia Van Groshaby.
And we're going to make marketing simple for you. That's our idea, is to give you something that you can take away and apply to your business, and you don't have to spend hours and hours and hours with tutorials to do it. We want to, the problem is most people think about digital marketing as the technical side, and we're here to tell you that it's more than the technical side. It's really the marketing side. That's what we're making easy for you. But before we get started, I do want to say real quick, you can subscribe on YouTube, youtube.com/Brennan and Annie. We would really appreciate that. You can also subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast. And you can leave us comments on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We go live there every Monday. So you can leave us questions there. We'll answer them for you. Sometimes we'll answer them live. Sometimes we'll get back to you. So either way, you will get an answer. It's what we do. So do ask the questions. That is important. Actually, Anastasia, before we get started, do you want to talk about Luna Lou?
Oh, yes.
So
Luna.
I know. So poor little Luna she's sick. We won't go into the details because when a Great Dane gets sick, it's not a pretty sight. But she's been very sick for this past few days, and I think she's better. The only problem is we're not feeding her as much as she normally gets. So right now she's being so bad.
She's just hangry.
So bad. She's hangry. And here's the thing. She has just gotten to the height that she can see as she's walking. She can see what's on top of the counter.
Oh.
So she's constantly trying to get stuff off the counter, which is driving me a little nuts.
I haven't
so
seen
that's
her for so long. I need to spend some
She's
time.
really big. Yeah, I need to bring her by so you can see her. So yeah, I have a little Great Dane. If you guys go and follow us over on ASMM, you will probably see a picture of her. If not, we'll put one up today so you can. Yeah. But let's talk about, I think this is a serious subject. Is Facebook obsolete? And it's a big subject because if you think about the fact that Facebook just rebranded and became Meta, right? Which was also a kind of ballsy move on their part because of the metaverse. And it's like, we're going to just be the metaverse, right? And, but that's a whole separate thing. We started noticing something a while back about Facebook. And so we want to talk about, is it obsolete? I will say a really short answer is it's not obsolete, but it should not right now be your primary focus for your small business. Your personal branding is a whole other story, but your small business, definitely it should not be. So the first thing we started noticing was lack of engagement. And you could talk about this a little bit, Anastasia, because you're the one who is primarily in there engaging.
Yeah, we're trying to get people to engage and to comment and so forth. And it's definitely getting more difficult. The vanity metrics that we've spoken about before are definitely coming into play here. Like we're seeing that people are not, liking posts, partly because they don't have to anymore. You don't need to be following a page or liking things to see more of those things. They're definitely paying attention to what's happening in our lives, what we are paying attention to online, and then they're feeding us those things. So, but there has been a lack of engagement. It's just not to the level that it was, and so we're not saying that there's no engagement, but we're also not looking at those things as much anymore. We're looking at impressions and, we are looking at engagement, but we're looking at impressions and engagement. But it's changing, but everything's always changing, right? The algorithms are always,
everything is changing.
AI is getting better, which is why we're seeing less use of hashtags and so forth to get the same numbers. So
exactly. And I didn't create a banner for this, but I'm going to put it out there. We're even noticing it with ads. If we create an ad on the Facebook Ads Manager, what happens is it by the way goes to Facebook, and it goes to actually it goes to WhatsApp as well if you have it, but it also goes to Instagram. And for Instagram, you're seeing really big numbers coming through from your ad that you placed on Facebook. You're not seeing those big numbers happen on Facebook. So we are seeing, I almost feel like Facebook is saying, go to Instagram, go to Instagram, go to Instagram. So I could be wrong there, but I do feel like that's kind of part of what their strategy is right now. Um, but should you stop using Facebook? I mean, Anastasia, you can answer
Absolutely
that.
not. No. You're not Facebook. Facebook is still, even though it's declining, we're seeing a steady decline. And I think that's partly because we're not seeing those younger people coming up there. And where the young people are, the older people are going to have to go, right? So if you have
Right.
kids, regardless of how old they are. So, I have teenager, we have teenagers that they're on Instagram. So we got to go and see what they're doing, right? Now, if you are traditionally a Facebook user and you have a child who has a child, so you become a grandparent, and the mom and the dad of your grandchild is using Instagram, but you've been on Facebook this whole time, what are you going to do? You're going to transition too.
I'm going over.
You're going to go.
Oh,
You're going to go. So eventually, we're going to see this kind of this shift, and I think that's
exactly.
it's definitely happening. But do you stop using Facebook? No, you don't use.
No.
You don't stop using something that has been working. It's not working to the same extent, but it's still doing something.
Exactly. But it is a good time to go and look and see, well, where is it? Where are you getting people? And we just did this. We're going through each of our clients. We're going through every one of them. And there have been clients that I go and I look and I'm like, okay, well, your Facebook engagement is down, but gosh, your LinkedIn engagement is so up, so we're going to put some focus there. Or your Facebook engagement is down. And I'm going to go back to that. But your Facebook engagement is down and your Instagram is really up, right? So we're going to pay attention to where you are, and you should do that. Look and see. Now, there are some exceptions. There are still some areas of Facebook that are doing really well. There are some, the trades are still doing really well there because it is a place where people go and they're asking their neighbors, do you know a plumber? Do you know an electrician? They're still doing well there. There are some things that are doing well there, but you only know that if you go and look at it. You only know it if you look at it. And so this is the time. No, Facebook is not obsolete, but it is having some issues right now. So go and look at your numbers across the
Facebook
board.
events are doing well. Facebook groups are doing well. So these are things that
Absolutely.
people are like, oh, I only go on there once a week to see what's happening in my neighborhood. So those things are still doing well. So that's why you got to look at what's doing well and take advantage of it. So that's the same with the platforms. So if you're doing better on Instagram or on Twitter or on LinkedIn, just maybe shift your focus. It used to be that Facebook, was the focus for most people, regardless of business type. Now we're seeing a bit of a difference.
Yeah, well, and let's talk also about this. We have one of the things that people have said to us about our agency is, well, wait a minute, why don't you just focus on one social media platform? How can you focus on so many? And we've said for a long time that you should diversify and that there's a number of reasons for that. But one of the reasons is that, my mama told me not to put all my eggs in one basket. Right? Don't put all your eggs in one basket. So we don't put all our eggs in one basket, which means that our clients have been able to pivot. We've been able to say, hey, we're having a problem over here, but that's okay because we've got you over here. And also, it shouldn't even be just social media platforms. Do you have a newsletter? If you don't have a newsletter, stop what you're doing and start a newsletter right now because you need to have all of these areas. If you don't have a website, I just talked to somebody the other day who said they don't have a website and they are a kitchen designer. And I was like, well, I can tell you now, if
No
I
way.
would never, ever, ever call you for my kitchen design. If I can't see what your designs are, if I can't see the before and afters, I'm not going to call you.
Is
So
a business
diversify.
even legitimate without a website? I mean, seriously,
No,
I really, really
yeah,
don't feel that it is. Like if you do
no,
a website today where you can go on Squarespace, you can go on GoDaddy or go on Squarespace, get a domain for $20 for the year, get a website for 200 and something, and sit and build it. It might take you some time, but You know,
You've at least got to have a landing page. You've got to have some sort of representation out there. But anyway, diversify. So that means, yes, social media. It means email marketing. It means having a website. I mean, if you want to go as far as what we do with podcasts and videos and YouTube channels and all of that, that's great. I mean, the more you diversify, the better you are if something goes wrong in one area. I mean, honest to God, Facebook could close down tomorrow. If you have no followers anywhere else, how are you going to rebuild?
mhm.
You know, I don't think they're going to close down tomorrow. Don't quote me on that, and don't kick me off of Facebook because I'm still on Facebook.
All right. And delete ASMR.
Exactly. But I will say one of the things yeah, we've said for a long time that Mark Zuckerberg was driving us nuts, but I did hear I just loved the interview. I even called you about it, Anastasia. Tim Ferriss interviewed Zuckerberg a few weeks ago, and he talked about his children. He talked about values. He talked about his core values in a way that I found enthralling. I loved. I'm actually going to go back and listen to it again because I liked it so much. So that does change things for me a little bit. I don't dislike Zuckerberg.
I
He
don't
seems
hate
like
it per
that
se.
young whippersnapper.
It's the people that work for him that are making my life difficult.
Exactly.
You
Exactly.
know that he's not
Um,
doing any coding anymore. Goodness gracious.
Exactly, exactly. But let's talk about, yeah, one of the main reasons to be on all these platforms
Mhm.
is your SEO, right? Facebook has 3.8 billion people on it on a daily basis. That's a lot of people. If you're going to have that many people, you're going to have a pretty big platform, right? Which means that if somebody doesn't find you anywhere else, at least they're going to find you on Facebook.
Exactly.
Right? So, yeah, do not get rid of your Facebook page. I want to make that very clear. I don't think Facebook is obsolete. I think they're having some problems, but don't get rid of it. And actually, this is ended up being a very quick podcast because I only have one more point. Unless Anastasia, do you have anything to add here?
Oh no, I think SEO, search engine optimization, so this is when somebody puts they're looking for a person. So we'll take Gus, for instance, they're looking for marketing. You put in marketing, where does ASMM come in that? So SEO is looking at the internet as a whole, and they're trying to see how many places that you are, because if you are in a lot of places and they're legitimate, then your ranking is going to go a bit higher because Google is saying, oh, this is a legit business, right? So that's why I'm saying
Right.
you got to have a website. You got to have a website. You got to have a Google My Business page. You got to have all these things. If you don't know, then you need to go back and listen to a previous episode from the beginning, because we have been saying all these things this whole time. But yeah, SEO is very important, which is why, Twitter is kind of it's a platform that, Anne is great at Twitter, and she's very active there. I don't even have an account in Twitter. Like, I go and I actually log in as you to find. Um,
Right.
I'm
Well, what? Wait a second. So I'm just going to defend Twitter a minute. Where do you go when you want to know whether there's an
That's
outage?
exactly my point. So when I'm like, Facebook is down, where do I go? I go to Twitter. I just don't log in as myself. But yeah,
Right.
Twitter is
Exactly.
everybody. The thing about Twitter is all the businesses, all the big companies, they're using it, and that's how they're informing people of anything that's happening quickly. It's on Twitter. It's nowhere else. Like, if you need to
Exactly.
find out what is going on, you go to Twitter because you'll find it. But
Absolutely.
some of our clients, they don't need Twitter, but
Right.
we use it for SEO. So we'll make sure
Yes.
that there's a post or two going up every week, just so that there's some activity. And so when people are looking, if there's keywords and things like that, it's going to raise their SEO a little bit. So it's an organic
Absolutely.
way of raising your SEO.
Absolutely. So I want to reiterate that don't underestimate Facebook, because here's the thing. This is going to be an oversimplification, but I'm going to oversimplify it for you. I mean, that's kind of our job, right? Marketing made simple. Um, Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg is distracted. He is very distracted, and he's got a 15-year plan for this metaverse thing, right? He's got a 15-year plan of what's going to happen next, and he is so focused on that right now. But eventually what's going to happen, first of all, the stock has gone down. He's definitely paying attention to that. and he's gonna have to make some decisions about where his focus is going to be. Is it going to be over here solely on the metaverse, or is he also going to focus on what's going on here? And my bet is shortly they're going to be focusing on what's going on over here and how do we get people to come back and how do we pivot in a way that makes us not obsolete,
Yeah.
makes us relevant again.
I
So
don't
I
underestimate
have,
them
I
at all.
have no doubt of it.
How are they going to pay for? How are they paying for all of that for Metaverse? They're paying for it from Facebook.
Right.
So when their stocks go down and there's less engagement and people are spending less time, that translates
And
into
less money.
advertising dollars. So if they don't have those advertising dollars, they're going. I mean, they're going to be, they're going to it's just going to hurt them. It's going to hurt their bottom line, and they're not going to be able to invest in the technologies that they need to go forward. So you can't underestimate them, and they've been around. I mean, this is the social media that has stuck through time. I mean, we're going through, I mean,
They
there's
created social media, really.
exactly, right? So we've had there used to be MySpace, that's gone. Like I can't even remember the other things that
Snapchat's barely, I mean,
was
I don't,
very active. I mean, yes, we're seeing a rise in TikTok, but it's still nothing is to the level of Facebook. Instagram
right,
is coming up. So what did they do? They bought them. And
right,
they
exactly.
integrated the two. So you have an Instagram page, you have a Facebook page, you can post on one and it goes on the other. Now you can go from Facebook to Instagram, which that was a new thing. So that was great.
Exactly.
There's things that are happening. So I do not count them out. They're, like
No,
you said, they might be split focused right now, but at the end of the day, when the dollars aren't coming in, what are they going to do? They're going to try and, I mean, they might not double down, but the company Meta as a whole, they might come up with something else, or they might just buy TikTok. So
right.
so the money's there and they need it to do the Meta stuff. So
Yeah.
they're going to have to raise things, and who knows what's going to happen, but maybe there'll be another new Facebook. Remember a few years ago when there was new Facebook?
Right.
I feel like there's going to be changes, and hopefully they're listening to the small businesses. I actually was thinking about this when we were in San Diego. Was somebody from Facebook there? Like, not as a, like, they have to have,
Representative, but were they actually paying attention to it?
they have to have had people in the seats. I mean, if they are not doing that, that's just stupid, because
Right.
we had a conference with thousands of professionals, whether they are at our level as an agency where they're managing multiple accounts, or just like there were a lot of people from individual companies who were just, they're the social media person for that company. And then they came to learn what they could learn. So I'm not even just saying Facebook, if Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn and TikTok, if they didn't have people there to go and listen to what the questions are that people are asking and the answers that these speakers are giving them, that's a missed opportunity for them.
I have a piece of advice for all of them right now based on what you just said. Next year, they all need to have a booth there. And it should not be a booth about selling what they do. It should be a feedback booth. It
Oh,
should be a booth where we can stop by and say, "Hey, did you know that this isn't happening, or that's not happening, or we could use this?" The amount of feedback that they could get from that conference alone is
exactly.
crazy. They should totally do that.
It's
So you
amazing.
guys can take that. I'm not going to charge you for it.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that they don't sponsor this event. Like,
Right.
why are you not having a presence? Like, you have professionals from this industry who are guiding their clients into it. I mean, the Social Media Examiner has a big reach, right? So why are they not at all of these? I mean, not just the social media marketing world, like all the different conferences that are around digital marketing. Why are they not there
Absolutely.
physically representing their business to see, to get that feedback and
Yeah.
tell people, be like, hey, I can't do this. Like, I don't understand how this is happening, because there's no way of getting help really. So,
Right.
and it would just, I mean, it would be a beneficial thing for everybody. But I love your idea.
Absolutely.
They should have
They
people there face to face, this is what I need from you. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. So every week we do these podcasts. You get to listen to them. Hopefully, you just love them because they're awesome. But maybe we leave you thirsting for more. So if you are thirsting for more, go over to asmmdigital.com/blog and see what's up. I will tell you this week we have an article about internal marketing. And if you don't think you need internal marketing, I'm going to give you a good example. We recently with a client. This happens all the time. It's not one client. It happens all the time. But this was a recent client, and we had we send out a questionnaire ahead of time asking all these questions. And we ask what are your core values and what do you stand for? We said all these things. And oftentimes it'll come back and they're pretty even across the board. They all kind of say the same thing. But once in a while, they all say completely different things. And then what I find is interesting is you'll go down and you'll say, do your employees and your customers, do they know what you stand for? And interestingly, with these, we got yes, no, yes, yes, no. And the truth is, when I told them, I'm like, no, you really don't, because when I went through and I asked what you stood for, everybody gave a different answer. And so
mhm,
your internal marketing is so important. Letting your people know what you stand for, right? That is so important. And by that I don't mean just like what do you stand for, your business, but what do you stand for as far as your charity? What do you stand for as what are your core values? What is the most important thing to you? We've said this before. If you think your core value, your number one value is customer service, and this is a great example, I see this happen all the time. You think it's customer service, and a customer comes in and says, hey, I bought this thingamajig and the arm fell off. And they say, yeah, we got no return policy. We're not giving you your money back. Well, is customer service your thing, or is your bottom line your core value? And probably customer service is your core value, but you just didn't tell your employees,
mhm.
right? So that internal marketing, what you're saying to your employees, that's what they're saying to your customers. So it matters. So go read that article. There's so many other articles over there. There's one about mental health and entrepreneurs, which is huge. We just talked about that before we started, actually.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need a
We're
break.
always so happy to
Um,
have you.
yeah, we're always talking about that. And then one more reminder, you can sponsor burgersandbands.org. Burgers and Bands is our charity that we started for suicide prevention. And it is all about spreading the word that you are not alone if you are struggling with depression. So many people have it. So many people keep quiet about it. And then you find out that the person sitting next to you every day is struggling. If you start talking about it, if we open the conversation, you can save a life, maybe your own, maybe your neighbor's. But Burgers and Bands is what we're using to do that. So please, if you want to sponsor, let us know. On another note, I'm going to tell you about another project. I just started the BNI Central Maryland podcast with Sarit Arbel and Brian Lobig. So tune into that. You're going to start seeing that in the next couple of weeks. We're really busy over here.
Yes,
So
very, very busy.
yeah, yeah. But again, we have next week we will have another subject for you. We'll talk about something new, all about social media. But one of the cool things about Anastasia and I is we pivot pretty quickly. So if you have a question that you think would make a great podcast, leave it in the comments and we'll get back to you and
Absolutely.
maybe we'll do a podcast about it. So take care.